Hi, my name is Nicole Cody, and I'm a graduate student at Morningside College. I'm also a first grade teacher at Davis County Elementary. And I'm going to share with you today some information on my research studies and titled The Next Step Forward in Guided Reading Instruction for First Grade Students. So the first thing I have is my problem statement. Students in the United States are definitely not reading at a proficiency level that is equal to other countries. So 62% of our 12th grade students in 2013 were scoring at a low proficient on the National Assessment of Educational Progress. So that means that only 38% of our students were scoring proficient. So that is definitely something that we need to look at, what we can do to fix that problem. So I chose this problem because during the first grade year, students have a big focus on reading. It is a big part of our learning. Students make a huge amount of growth during that time, so we really want to look at what can we do as early elementary teachers to help them with this great base for reading. So students are struggling with reading, there is a great impact on their life. So they need to be able to be sufficient in decoding and comprehension in order to be successful in the educational setting that they live in. So students, if they are not comprehending and decoding well by 4th grade, they really have trouble getting caught up from that. Their independent reading assignments that come from that, they really focus on doing them on your own and really kind of learn them on your own as you go through middle and high school. So once students start to fall behind, they tend to just kind of fall farther and farther behind because their peers are just continuing to grow. So those students start to have a lower sense of self-worth. They're not putting forth that effort that their peers are. And then it goes on from there. They're less likely to graduate high school, which means they're less likely to go to college, which means that their employment opportunities are going to be even less. Their income will be less, so it just kind of keeps going on from there, and it starts at the very beginning. So we think about what can we do to help them with this problem. So I looked at 3 different types of instruction that we have for students. The first one I looked at was whole group instruction. So with whole group instruction, students are getting the same instruction for everybody. It's not differentiated at all. So we're looking at students that are just all together with the teacher talking in front of them. So the 2 different studies that I looked at showed that there was some growth and some positive parts of it. However, during these studies, there were also some small group instruction involved. So it's kind of hard to say that it was just whole group. So it's kind of hard to find anything that was strictly whole group instruction, even though we did see some positive results from those studies. Then I looked at one-to-one instruction. I focused on reading recovery because this is something that's used at the school that I work at. Students were able to show growth throughout this process. Their scores did improve. However, they continued to need support through title reading and things like that into the future. Also, this intervention is not available for all students in the classroom. It would just be for the lowest readers in that grade. So it's something that wasn't available for everyone. So then I looked at small group instruction, where that can be for everybody in the classroom, and it is differentiated. So the interventions that I looked at were successful. The first one, blending and decoding, but maybe not in other parts, like sounds and words and sight words. And then also another one, guided silent reading intervention, which is like Reading Plus, and that one showed that 80% of the students were able to score proficient on their assessment. So that is great news for that part of the assessment. So I looked at that and I thought, okay, so with first graders, I didn't find a lot of information on first grade research studies. And I also wanted to continue looking at small group instruction. So at the school that I teach at, we currently use guided reading instruction. So that is small group. It's a way that teachers, like I said, differentiate for all of the students in the classroom. And we have a goal that we want to encourage students to be able to read independently on grade level texts throughout their time in the elementary. So we're leaning towards using what we call Next Step Forward in guided reading instruction. So I didn't find any studies that had used this. So that's what I looked for when I chose my topic of my study. So in this type of instruction, they use everything that they use in guided reading, but they also focus on sight words and have a writing component within that to help with their comprehension. So the goal for this is to be able to self-monitor. We want students to be able to notice their own errors and make sure everything's making sense and sounding right and all of that, and to be able to problem solve as they read as well. So being able to use all those strategies that they've learned. We focus on differentiated instruction within the small group, sometimes one-to-one if you have a student that's way lower than the rest of the kids in the class. And this actually it can be used from kindergarten through 8th grade. So that has a big span of ways that this could be used within all the way up to the 8th grade. So students could have that consistent instruction throughout. So the purpose of my study, like I said, was to see if this really was something that would work well for our students. I wanted to use an experimental study because I was able to compare one class with another class, and I wanted to look at their sight word knowledge and their fluency scores were the two parts that I looked at. And I hypothesized that the students that received next step and guided reading instructions would outperform the students who did not receive that type of instruction on both sight word knowledge and fluency. Impacts on this, I just be able to help us make decisions on our instruction for reading, and be able to help me personally decide and be able to give information to our coaches and administrators on if this was something that we should continue to use in the future. So I'm going to talk about variables. The variables, independent was the type of instruction, and dependent was the assessment scores that we would get from this. Participants in my study, 2 first grade classrooms in our building, 18 in the experimental group, 6 girls and 12 boys, and 21 in the control group, 9 girls and 12 boys. And within our building, we have 43.5% clean reduced lunch, so this would be consistent throughout the classrooms that were used in this study as well. Materials that were used, the first thing is the Next Step Forward and Guided Reading Manual. It has a lot of information in it that can explain exactly how this can be used. In the back of the book, it has copies of a cleaning sheet that you can use to clean for each book. You need text for the children, multiple copies, many different levels that they can use in a small group, and then also book tubs to put those in so that they can have something to practice those books. We use composite notebooks for writing in the back, for writing with response to our reading. We use, of course, pencils and erasers to help with that writing. The students each had an individual whiteboard with a marker and eraser for writing their sight words at the beginning of the lesson. And then we had word work supplies like animated sound boxes, analogy charts, magnetic letters, and a metal board that you could put those on so they could stay whenever they needed to manipulate the word work. For the assessment that I used in this study, I used the Formative Assessment System for Teachers, also known as FAST. And within the study, I used the fall assessment as our pre-test and the winter assessment as our post-test. And the test that we used, the sections of that test were sight words, word segmenting, nonsense words, sentence reading, and then from that whole thing, you get a composite score. So you can see the benchmarks for each kind, each type of test. They do grow a lot. There's a lot of change between the fall score and the winter score. Within this assessment, the reliability score for FAST is 0.97. And for the state of Iowa, they require a reliability score of at least 0.7, so that was a great thing for that part of the test. And the validity score was 0.75, and the state of Iowa requires at least 0.3 for that section. So that shows that it's very reliable and very valid for our schools. The experimental group, what they did throughout this study, they were instructed using the Next Step Forward and Guided Reading instruction during our time. We had a 90-minute block. Groups were of 4 to 6 students throughout the time. They had 20 to 30 minutes per group, and everybody in the class participated. So when we do this, we start out, we have two different days on our lessons. So the first day we have a sight word practice. We just write some words quickly, and then I introduce a new book to the students. And then as they read, I go around the table and quietly listen to them read, and I observe to see what strategies they're using, what they're being successful with, what they might not be using, and what we could really focus on during our strategy work later on in the lesson. When the students are all finished, we have a comprehension discussion. We talk about what they noticed in the book and what they read, and then we talk about strategies. So maybe what somebody did well, or maybe what we could have used to solve that problem. And then we have a new sight word that we'll use in the second day, and then we do our word work activity. The second day, we start out with the sight word practice, which is where we practice the sight word from the day before. I take a running record of at least one student, and we go back to that comprehension, discuss it one more time, and then we use that information from our comprehension discussion to help us with our writing about our reading. The control group has the same amount of time, the same type of groups. Once again, everybody participates. And each day, they do a running record from the previous day. Every day, they get a new book, and then they have the comprehension discussion. They don't have the sight word practice. They don't have the word work part of the lesson. To analyze my data, I used an independent sample t-test. So I took the scores from the fall FAST, and I compared those scores. And then I also took the scores from the winter FAST test, our post-test, and I compared those scores as well. So the information from the assessment, you can see in the table here, the pre-test for sight words had a very small effect size here at the top. And then, so it really wasn't statistically significant at the beginning. If you look at the post-test for sight words, you'll see that it has a small to medium size effect size. So you see that looks like it made a lot of difference for them. In the reading pre-test, once again, not a statistically significant effect size. And you can also look at the p-value to see that those are completely different. It was very statistically significant for the sight word section on the post-test, but the sentence reading part and the p-value was not as significant there. If you look at the effect size, it did have a small effect, but it wasn't as large as the sight words. So here you can see the table that I have for sight words. They were pretty similar. They both made growth, but it seems like the experimental group made even more growth as we looked at that effect size. The fluency, they both started out very, very similar, and they both made a lot of growth. So from that, I can confirm my hypothesis that the experimental group outperforms the control group on sight word knowledge, but I could not confirm the hypothesis for fluency since they both made so much growth. Within the past research, I have that small group reading instruction differentiated for all students would be a great way for them to learn. And within this, we use Vygotsky's sociocultural theory, which showed that reading instruction is very social, and those interactions between the student and teacher, those social interactions are that foundation for those beginning reading skills. And teachers are also able to use the zone of proximal development, which means they can scaffold and help those students work just beyond what they could do independently. So implications from this study are that teachers are able to work with small groups of students to differentiate instruction. Like I said, use scaffolds to help them increase those reading skills. We're able to focus more on sight words with this study than the general guided reading lessons. And like I said, they connected that reading and writing when they were able to write about the books that they read. Limitations. So there were several different parts here. This was a short amount of time for the study, and reading really takes a lot of time. This study was done at the beginning of the year, so we spent a lot of time on routines and expectations that kind of took out on time that could have been used for this study. Students might have a surge of growth in different times, so you really have to think about what was the window of opportunity for that. I did have a small sample size. My experimental group, I had a lot of students move in and out, so that was really difficult because there were some students that I had fall data for, but not winter data, or winter and not fall. So I had to kind of take them off of my list, so there were fewer participants in that group. The weather this winter was difficult. We had a lot of snow days, so that made it hard. We had some time that would take out on some of the momentum that we were getting there. I also had a lot of sickness within my classroom as well. So there were some students that were sick the whole week that they did their FAST testing and ended up taking their assessment on a completely different week. External influences like parent involvement. Some students read almost every night after school, and other students hardly ever read. And just that desire and motivation as well was different between the students. If I were to do this study again, I would take a longer time for the study, maybe the whole school year, possibly look at students from kindergarten through second grade across the different grade levels, and a larger group of participants would be helpful. That way it would kind of get away from that, where I had students moving in and out. If you could do two groups that were in the control group and two classes in the experimental group, that might help solve those problems. And my references. Okay, thank you for taking time to listen today, and I hope you enjoyed and maybe learned something from my presentation.